What's up, everybody? It's Pikel with the Infinity Edge podcast, brought to you by the esports department. This is the free show, correct? Can I get a yes?
That's a 10-4, good buddy.
Well, that's not a yes. So now we have
Yes.
to fight to the death. All right. Well, it's the free show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the free show. If you want access to the non-free shows, you're going to have to sign up for the esportsdepartment.com to get more high-quality entertainment such as this. Not only are we entertaining, we also have fantastic information about the LEC and the LCS, the good teams and the bad teams. You know who I'm talking about specifically right now. If you'd like to support the show and everyone creating content at the esportsdepartment.com, you should use the code IEDGE. That's IEDGE. IEDGE. Like a spelling bee. I got that right?
Well done. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
fairly certain. I haven't won a
Yeah.
spelling bee in my life, but I think I got that much.
Good. That's fine with me. So basically, last week we had some good LEC and LCS slates. Hef thinks he's a cool guy because he won a bunch of money. What was that, Saturday?
Sunday or yes, Saturday. Yeah, I didn't have a show to victory lap it, so now it's kind of like lame. I already withdrew the money from the account, so it looks like I have
Nice.
less money than I started with. But it happened, I swear.
We will be victory lapping at some point during this video. But before we do that, Alan 1, Alan 2, Ghost and the Hef, how are things?
Uh, Doing all right. I'm glad we didn't do a show right after Saturday's LEC because I told everyone not to leave home with other G2s, and then they lose to Schalke. So I looked pretty dumb on that one. And
Yikes.
I'm ready to move on. This is a forward-thinking show, and
Yeah.
we'll pass it off to you, Alan.
Ghost,
No.
aka Evan Silva. Nice. I like it.
Doing great. Very ready to never lose again, I think. I got a taste of the winning this weekend, and I'm ready to just, bank every GPP there is. So
Yeah.
no more losing. Yeah, I on the other hand told them to stay away from G2, but I think that yes, true. And the first time was not great. But I do think that the result that we got where Schalke wins but isn't optimal was pretty low in the grand scheme of possibilities, and that's a roundabout way of saying I got lucky on that slate. But we take those.
Yeah, for those of you out there who are looking for the next $1 million idea, the grand scheme of things, that'd be a great horror flick or amusement park ride. So you're welcome. Whoever makes money off of that, I do expect some form of commission. Or you could just use that money and buy a bunch of subscriptions to the esports.com with the code IEDGE, and I would get some of that. So that'd be nice. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'd be into that as well.
yes, of course. So company man, we I think we're ready to go. You might as well get your victory lap out of the way when we're starting this. Unless you don't want to. I mean, that would be the kind of humble thing to do.
Oh, I want to.
That'd be kind of loserish.
No.
So definitely do the victory lap.
We'll get your victory lap in, and then we'll give you guys each couple minutes on your thoughts of Saturday's game since we didn't have a show after that, and then we'll hop into the slate.
Sweet. Yeah, so I actually didn't I got third and fourth in the LEC, which was nice. There were a couple of lineups that are just not the typical kind of lineup that I play that took them down. I think they were like 3-3-1s with a one-off team slot or something like that. So I can't be too mad there. But then in the LCS was where I made hay with a Santorin captain, C9 and Team Liquid, and I won literally everything I put that lineup into. Obviously, the big GPP I split up top, but I only played one lineup in the LCS there, and that one turned out to be the winner. So once again, maybe not the most sustainable way to play DFS, but it felt good for sure, and definitely having quite a profitable season so far. So get in on this iEdge train for while I'm still hot, and then when I go cold and Michael's kind of consistent ROI will get you over the top.
Yeah, so I've been losing since I won. I've won. I don't think I've won over $1,000 on a slate since the first night of LPL LCK. The people in my Discord, however, have been crushing it. And it really comes down to contest selection. And I am a very stubborn person in many ways. I think anyone who follows me on Twitter will understand that. Uh, I will fight you.
No context
Um,
needed.
Yes, none needed. But the thing is like I try to give my full opinion on things. Some people say I play both sides. I don't play both sides on DraftKings. If you look at my lineups a lot of the time, I will completely cut out a bunch of teams and then I'll just go with my gut and try to win a couple $1,000 based off of that. And I've had like two or three good nights that have kind of made me have reduced a lot of my losses that I would have. And I also don't play max entry a lot of the time because, like I've said in the past, like I work a full time job. I'm not trying to pay for my hobby with my full time job. That's just madness. Um, but yeah, if you listen to us and you take what we say to heart and like you think through it for yourself and you put together some good lineups, you can win some good money. I mean, that's just the way it is with contest selection and everything. I play the large field stuff because it's a little bit more challenging and more entertaining. Like if I wanted to throw $333 at the Triumphant Warrior every day, like if you just think about that, like let's say there's 50 of those slates a year, or there's probably more than that, right? Let's say there's 150 of those slates a year. Just think about how much money you're potentially burning through, and like you bank it once or twice. Um, and get about even, like, is that really like what you want to do? Like that doesn't seem, it seems way too stressful for me. I'm trying to reduce the stress in my life, uh but here we are. So let's start talking about games.
All right, well, we're going to move on to Friday's LEC slate. Our first matchup, we're going to talk about Schalke 04 versus Rogue. Schalke comes in this match 3-2. Rogue is a perfect 5-0. Can they be beaten? We'll pass it off to you first on this one, Alan. Will Rogue fall to Schalke like G2 did?
No, I doubt it. I think that G2 basically through that game at like minute 5, they decided, hey, you guys want to take a coin flip at the scuttle grab for shits and giggles, essentially. And the game was pretty much over from there because they lost that team fight and just could never claw it back. That is not the type of thing that Rogue does. And so I don't really see them losing any of the lanes here. I think that they have the better player in the top lane, mid lane, bot lane, and jungle. So there's no reason to think that Rogue doesn't take care of business here. The question then becomes if they're fantasy relevant. And Rogue has, I think they won maybe one slate so far. There was one where Inspired really popped off and another jungler popped off, I think. But generally, people don't think of them as a team that wins a lot of slates. I don't think of them as a team that wins a lot of slates just because they just don't get enough kills. In the LCS, that can be fine because sometimes no team gets a bunch of kills in the LCS. But in the LEC, when you have Mad Lions, Fnatic, and G2, it's really asking a lot for them or their opponents to not get to like 20 kills. And so then Rogue lineups, if you're like really heavy on Rogue, you're kind of dead. So I will play a little bit of Rogue here because there's some dogs that I like on this slate that I think could fit with Rogue, and then they're a safe option there because I feel like they're gonna win, and then the dog is gonna be the high scorer. But they're definitely not like one of my favorite plays on the slate.
All right, Michael, we'll pass it on to you. Your thoughts on Schalke versus Rogue?
Sure. So lane by lane, Auto Omne against Broken Blade. I think that Broken Blade right now is probably better than Auto Omne. Auto Omne is a very consistent player on a better team. Most days they will look better because they're on a better team than the opponent. But I think if Broken Blade and Auto Omne switch teams, I think that Rogue would be about the same, and Schalke would probably be worse because of the types of players, like stylistically, that are on the team. Inspired against Gilius. This is an interesting matchup for me. I'm going to come back to this one last. Larson against Abadage. Larson's the better player. A lot of people are very high on the upside of Abadage, but I don't know if you can really take the potential versus what Larson has shown us. Hansama and Trimby against Neon and Limit. The one thing I'm afraid of, like I love Hansama. People are already talking about Trimby and how like he came from like their development and like just all the garbage that people talk about. Um, like the LEC produced a video about it the other day saying that Trimby's like going to be an up and coming star or something because he's a young like it's that's really not how it works. Um, I hate those kinds of stories because they seem to have so much impact on how people talk about them for like 10 years. So it's just the way it is. Like that's going to be a person that I'm probably going to be against a lot of the time because those narratives are just like uncontrollable. Another person who has a narrative like that is Gilius. And like I said last week, Schalke is a team that has better winning chances than they do like top scoring in DraftKings. When Schalke was doing well for DraftKings is when they had the other AD carry, because they could actually play around the other AD carry. I don't like Neon very much. So Neon and Limit, I think they're just like much worse than Hansama and Trimby. The thing with the jungle matchup is Gilius, like I've said before, is always willing to kind of make a play to try to win the game. They've been pretty subdued so far this year in terms of how they're approaching the game, resulting in lower kill score games, some weird macro plays, that base race that they had against G2. They only had 13 kills, like Alan said. That's like on the lower end for what you'd expect for a team that beats G2. The jungle matchup they had, and I'm not 100% sure how the pick ban went, but I'm assuming that Kai'Sa was first picked overall. G2 went into Graves plus another champion, and then the response pick was Udyr. And I think that in that matchup specifically, I could see how an Udyr team could be really good against a Graves team because of that overwhelm mechanic we've talked about in the past with champions like Hecarim. So they are somewhat similar. Do I think that's going to be an issue for Rogue? Not really. I think that Rogue's upside is lower for DraftKings scoring than G2, but the number of games that they throw away is probably going to be lower in the long run. So, do I think Schalke has a chance to win this match? Yes, but very low. Like the lowest I can really project teams is like 30% ish, unless I think it's a complete mismatch. And right now I think that's about what the line is.
Okay,
160. Yeah. Or actually no, it's closer than that. So I'm on the rogue side for this one, but I don't love him for DraftKings.
so is this game where you might fade away even if you think if Schalke does come up with that 30% win, will it be fantasy relevant?
Well, it could be DraftKings relevant without them being one of the primary stacks. So I do think that if you can fit Rogue into your lineups in the team slot, that might be an interesting spot because we do have these macro heavy games. Maybe it goes super late and you can get an additional upside from the team slot. Their team slot is the third most expensive. So like you could get into a spot where your secondary G2 or Fnatic stack don't fit because of the team slot. You drop down to 5,000 for the team and you get a combination that you wouldn't have otherwise. So that's an interesting thing to take a look at. It's just I'm afraid of the upside. So I don't know if I can use them as a primary stack. They're probably in play for secondary stacks and one-offs for like the team slot or something like that.
All right, sounds good. Alan, any final thoughts on Schalke versus Rogue?
No, I think that Michael covered kind of my thinking there, except that, Schalke in a law or in a win, even I would still be concerned about them just because Rogue, if they get a little bit behind, they just kind of try to minimize mistakes and then win in a late game situation in a late game team fight, which is a hard DraftKings situation. So even if Shaka were to win, it could be the same situation as it was with G2, where they just don't score enough to even matter.
So I guess I'll give a question to Ghost for you to answer, and then you can segue into the next thing. If I told you if you were playing 20 lineups, how many lineups would you include Schalke in?
Probably just a couple. I'm not very high on them winning this match, and Rogue did kind of have that way of like turtling when they're down.
Yeah, I think that's how it'll go.
Yeah, I would
Oh, do we
agree
know
with
what
that.
side? Do we know what side selection? Who has side or not side selection? What side each team is on?
I
Don't have that.
Yeah, I used to get into
Always
that
know
a
better.
little bit more, but yeah.
Right now, it does seem relevant for drafting because everyone just copies each other,
Mhm.
and it's the kind of thing that it should not impact teams as much as it does, but it does. So, personally, I think that um, blue side is just better right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if the stats would back me up on that in terms of results, but I just feel like blue side is so much better in most regions because you have a priority pick in the jungle or at 80 carry, and then you can kind of dovetail that into a big draft advantage because when people are trying to pick like the other half of the Kaisa Samira matchup or like going Kaisa into Aphelios or doing something like that, you're kind of forcing the other team to make a important decision about their draft early on, and then you can start trying to counter it. So we've seen some gigantic draft differences in games so far this year.
I believe Schalke is going to be on the blue side for this game.
Okay.
Just looking it up here quick.
So okay, last thing I swear I'll stop talking about this and we can just go on to the next game.
Okay.
I'm not going to do this, but I'm begging someone that's watching this show find out underdog win rates on red side versus blue side. That is something that I think could be very interesting to look at. Because if there's a draft advantage for blue side, then the win rating for underdogs should be better on blue side.
Yeah, I would say that I do know that, like, it throughout the history of League, blue side is about 53-ish%, and it's been higher and
Mhm.
lower for different seasons. So, I mean, blue side has always kind of been a thing, especially, just in the draft mostly.
Last year I feel like red side was better for most of the year.
And red
I
side
don't know.
was definitely better at the World Championship, I remember, which was kind of
Yeah.
interesting. But anyway, we'll go on to the next one.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to our next game on the slate. We're going to talk about the Misfits. They're 2-3 versus XL, who are also 2-3. I'm feeling like Misfits. I can't really get a gauge on. One day I'm feeling like they're going to be pretty good, and then the next day I think they're going to be low tier, losing to Astralis. So
Mm,
we'll start with you on this one, Michael. Misfits versus XL. Who do you got? Would you take a 4 stack from this game? Your
yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Misfits. Um I know that in week 2 they lost to Rogue, they lost to SK Gaming. They're not an infallible team, but they are a team that most people will not be comfortable with for the entire year. So if you're consistently playing Misfits and playing for them to be one of the higher combined kill score teams just in general, I think that you're going to get a benefit out of that in the long run. So I'll take a look at some of their team level statistics. Um, but before I do that, I'm gonna go lane by lane, throw it over to Alan, and then I'll try to find a stat or two before we move away from this. So Hyrit against Cries. Hyrit, the good thing about Hyrit is that they play these early game champions that will be able to kind of stop Cries from getting to the super late game. That's always something I'm going to mention with Cries because I think it's always a realistic possibility. Razork's better than Dan. I think that's an actual big advantage. Vetio against Chekalad, both very young. Well, not very young, very new mid laners to the LEC. They're very similar in terms of ability. Vetio, after they had like a segment on him, their team started losing, which is amazing. That always seems to happen. Um, and then Kabi against Patrick, Kabi and Vander against Patrick, and Torre. I like Kabe a lot for DraftKings because the team will play around Kabe. So I think that if you're only going to have exposure to Kabe captain lineups for primary stacks from Misfits, I don't think that's a terrible idea. Just get a couple different rotations of them, and you'll know after the first game, are those lineups alive or are they dead? And I will generally do that with a game with the first game of the day, but especially when it's a team like Misfits, who I think people are having difficulty kind of figuring out how good they are. It just makes me like them even more. And then the last thing I would say is the money line is minus 140 to plus 110. Do you both think that's accurate, or do you have a lean?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely. So it's minus 140 for Misfits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would bet Misfits in that scenario for sure, personally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ghost.
Yeah, I think I'd go with Misfits as well. I don't think I'm as sold on XL, but yeah, Misfits is one of those teams that's been kind of frustrating for the LEC.
Yeah,
But
that's the one thing that's kind of annoying because like for a team that nobody really feels great about, it seems like an easy spot to be on them. You know what I mean? So not ideal for us.
all right, well, we'll get in more in-depth analysis from you, Alan. Misfits versus XL. Who do you like? Would you take a 4 stack from one of these teams?
I feel like you're just speaking to Misfits' entire existence when you were like, I can't get a read. One week it seems like they're going to beat everyone in the league, G2 Fnatic, and then the next week they're going to lose to Astralis. So I feel you on that, but I think that's an even better reason to go back to them here. I won't go through all the lanes, but I do think that like the jungle matchup is so favored towards Misfits here. I really don't think that Dan is ready for the LEC. He hasn't looked good at all, and they're basically trying to hide him and like play late game scaling to get to like a spot where Patrick is relevant because he is, their best player, I would say. But you can't do that against Razork. You can't hide anyone against Razork because he's a very aggressive jungler and he's going to get in there and take over the game. If he gets on like Talia or, even like Lilia, I really just think that he makes a huge difference in this game. So that would be why I would want it on the money line with Misfits. And then I think that, Misfits has been a pretty high kill per win team. XL hasn't been great in the deaths in their losses, I don't think, but they did have that one huge one against G2 where G2 screwed me when I said to fade them because XL doesn't have a great death per loss. So they could, it could happen with Misfits, and Misfits fits really well with like Mad Lions Fnatic G2 this week. So I do think it'll be a little bit popular, but I think that matchups like these where it's a coin flip odds wise, people get a little bit nervous about playing, even though I think these are some of the ones that are the best for winning contests. They get a little nervous because they're like, I'm not 100% sure who's going to win. And, if you're somebody who plays like 3 to 5 lineups, you're not going to be like, oh, I'll just spread exposure to both sides or whatever. So you either end up picking one or you're like, nah, I'll just go with someone that I think is going to be guaranteed to win. So I think Misfits is in a good spot here, just because of how you can fit them with people, and then obviously their kill upside is always there because they're a pretty aggressive team so far. So I like Misfits a lot on this slate. I think I went through and built quite a few lineups already, and I had 5 Misfits out of 20 or something like that. So, and then I don't think I really ended up with any Excel just because I don't love the upside for them in a win, because the only way that they've shown that they're able to win is like stall out the game with those kind of shielding comps for Patrick so far, and yeah, that doesn't get me excited DraftKings wise.
Yeah, and just to hone in on this point here, XL are 2-3, but they've been front loaded with some very tough teams. Already they've gone up against G2, Mad Lions, and Rogue. The next toughest one, in theory, would be Fnatic. So they have an easier start of the schedule going on here. So those 3 losses are kind of forgivable, I guess. Misfits, on the other hand, why, if you're new to the show, why we can't get that good feel on them. They've beaten Fnatic, they've beaten Mad Lions, and then they drop games to Rogue, SK, and Vitality. Um, Rogue dropping a game to them is fine. SK and Vitality, I would have thought they would have come ahead in those matches, but that's another reason why it's hard to get a read on Misfits.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll go back to this when we get to SK, but in that Misfits SK game, because I was exposed to Misfits for sure, and I was pissed. They let Tinks play Talia and they like surrounded it with a good comp. I can't remember it exactly, but I was just like, oh shit, they're screwed. So, yeah, I think that SK has some upside if they get a big jungle carry. So that loss I'm less concerned about. The Vitality one was a little shaky for sure.
All right.
So that was a Volibear, Talia, Twisted Fate, Vayne, and Rel
Yeah, the
against
Twisted
Jhin.
right. That Twisted
And
Fate
everything-
like dive with Talia is it's hard to beat.
Yeah, especially when you have the worst AD carry in League of Legends on your team in Jin.
And
So before we move on, I wanted to speak to some of the statistics that we have for like teams and losses. So XL Esports, in their 3 losses, they average 17 deaths per loss, and their average game time in losses is 32 minutes, right? Compare that to Fnatic. Fnatic's deaths per loss, guess what it is?
it's like
Guess
25 or something. I was looking at it
It's
earlier
high.
today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 25.3. And their average game time is lower. So the reason I wanted to bring this up is because you would assume that as without knowing anything else about League of Legends, right? You would assume that deaths are somewhat correlated with average game time, and they may be. I haven't done the statistical analysis to kind of think of that, but there's really 2 ways to look at it. So the one way to look at it is that teams that are willing to contest objectives are more likely to have more deaths earlier in the game, and that will result in higher death totals and faster games. Teams that are reluctant to fight until they think they're like scaled up, like a team like Excel, you would think that there might actually be less opportunities to score DraftKings points because of kills and deaths and stuff like that. Um, because they're trying to drag the game on and they're willing to give up objectives, trade objectives, and do all that kind of stuff. So it is important to kind of watch those kinds of tendencies and think about how these teams actually approach the game, especially underdogs, because I've said this in the past. Like, if I think that my team is not as good as the other team, I want to take as many risks as possible and just try to make a couple good plays, create a small lead, and it's easier to play League of Legends with a lead. A lot of these teams in pro play, they think to themselves like, "Oh, we scale well." It's like, okay, well, you scale well. You're playing against a team that's better than you, so they're scaling too. What's the plan now? And it just seems like they don't play that way. So it is pretty frustrating. XL is a team that's going to be frustrating, I think, for a lot of the season. And then the last thing I would say, they are the third highest combined kills per minute team in the LEC, but the sample size is so small that I think we can just completely ignore it. And as time goes on, the the tendencies of the team are going to drive these statistics much more um, than the results we've seen so far. So I'm not going to do much with these statistics, but I just wanted to speak to it because I know that we've had some feedback where people want to hear a little bit more about stats. But there's a lot of reason to be skeptical about a lot of these stats. I mean, think about baseball. Baseball's been around for 70 or 80 years, and the statistical revolution happened like 20 years ago because people actually figured out what stats are important and which ones aren't important. In my opinion, for League of Legends specifically, a lot of these stats don't mean anything. People are trying, and I appreciate that. We should be trying to figure out the statistical side of League of Legends, but we're not going to find it in the results. I think we're going to find it on the game system side, but that's a topic for another day. And then the thing with with Misfits that you were talking about, I am 100% in on Misfits. I believe in Misfits. I want to be high on them all year, and I just want that to be known.
Well, we'll hop into our third game of the slate. We got the Mad Lions, who are 3-2, versus SK Gaming, that are 2-3. On the Gold Card podcast, John kind of made a bold statement saying the Mad Lions would go 2-0 this week. And I want to hop to you first, Alan, on this one. Is this where Mad Lions begin their 2-0 week against SK Gaming?
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, I would say it's probably like a 65% outcome, right? I think if you would have asked anyone before the season which player would you take in every role on this game you would probably take the Mad Lions player everywhere except maybe jungle. You'd kind of throw your hands up with the Elyoya Tinks. I think I would take Tinks personally. I mean, Tinks out jungled him multiple times when they both played in EU Masters. So, that's a little place where you could look to get an underdog. If Tinks gets on Talia again, there's a chance that SK wins this game. But as far as DraftKings go for this game, I think this game is like really, really good spot for DraftKings because I think Mad Lions is maybe the fourth most expensive team on this slate, if I remember correctly, because Fnatic was playing Astralis, and then G2 is always expensive, and Rogue's always expensive because they just beat everyone. And so Mad Lions, even though they, I think are a pretty big favorite here, are not priced super heavily. So I think I built most of my lineups with exposure to this game. So I think I have somewhere around 15 or 20 lineups right now, and I think almost all of them have either Mad Lions or SK in them. Sometimes they're the 4 stack, sometimes they're the 3 stack. But I think this is a really, really good game for DraftKings because Mad Lions is always in those bloody type games. I mean, that game with Fnatic that they played was borderline psychopathic. So I think that they are set up for a big score if they win, and SK is set up for a big score if they win, and the pricing is pretty loose on this game. So yeah, this is my favorite game of the day for sure.
All right, we'll kick it over to you, Michael, on this one. Mad Lions versus SK Gaming. Can SK take the game, or are you all in on the Mad Lions here?
Yeah, so first I'd like to speak to the quote unquote bold call. I don't think it's a bold call at all. Uh it's kind of a weak call. But most importantly, it's the right call. And that's really all we care about here. I don't care if you have hot takes. I want you to have accurate takes. So John saying that they're going to win both games, I think that it's definitely the most likely outcome. I think by a considerable margin. And if you take that the money lines from both games, I think that the number would be a little bit lower than 60% because you would multiply the two together, right? So it would be like minus 140 is around like the high 50s, and then the second match would be minus 200, which is like 60ish percent or 67%. So it's like 0.67 times 0.58. So I would parlay those. That seems okay to me. I think that the odds that they win both these matches are probably closer to 70%. And I would just treat them as independent outcomes and just hope that the odds are in my favor twice. Um, because ultimately, Mad Lions is the better team and has the better players in almost every single role. I think that is an accurate description of what's going on here as well. I do like Tinks. I like I said, I'm going to talk about it, and it might seem stupid to some people um, who are maybe less familiar with the game or like haven't played the game as much. But having the wherewithal to Hecarim E through a minion to block a skill shot for one of your teammates is next level. Like I was watching like a little highlight thing on Instagram about Quentin Nelson, the center. He's the center, right, for the Colts. And he was just like he had the most ridiculous blocks that were the result of realizing like this defender is going to take this angle, and in order for me to stop this guy from hitting my quarterback, I basically need to turn my entire body, sprint at him, and throw my body at him to have a chance of stopping him from hitting my quarterback. And it worked. Like those are the kinds of things, those small realizations, and then having the ability to follow through on it. Those are the kinds of things you can't teach to people. It's like it's similar to jungle pathing or having the intuition of knowing where the enemy team is, being able to read like how a player is walking back and forth in the lane to try to hit them with a skill shot or a key ability. It's just those intangible things that are difficult to kind of see and appreciate. And I do think that Tinks has a lot of that. So that is it's a great sign for SK in the long run, but against Mad Lions, it's going to be really tough to beat them. They are the second highest team in combined kills per minute. Another thing that I would say about statistics I've discussed a lot with people, like on my small Twitch streams and like with people in my Discord, is the significance of patch changes. And there are a lot of people out there who are more statistically driven and like will do some research into this kind of stuff. And they said that they found the relevance of like a patch before is basically there's no relevance of that information at all, which is kind of surprising to me. I think that might have something to do with small sample size because a lot of team tendencies kind of like stay the same as time goes on, and they'll just find a new way to play their old play style. Um, but like a team like Mad Lions has been the same for a little over a year, right? So I do agree. I do want exposure to Mad Lions. SK isn't the best team, right, in terms of statistics for deaths per loss.
No, they're right around middle of the pack though. I think their combined kills per minute is it's literally
Yeah,
middle of
in
the
losses
league.
it's 0.7. In losses it's 0.7. So it does matter. I guess one thing to think through would be, do we think that this game goes shorter? Like, if I had to assume how long this game is going to go, both teams right now are averaging 31 and 32 minutes. Do you think it's going to be over under 31 minutes?
I mean, it's a good handicap, right? Because you just take the average of the two teams. But I would guess probably under because I do expect that Mad Lions probably outclasses them. But I still just think that for me, Mad Lions is a team that is always just going to get a lot of kills in their wins because they just will do kind of crazy shit at the end of the game to get some extra kills in there a lot of the time. So I still want exposure to them. And then in a loss, I mean, if they were to lose to SK, I think SK easily wins the slate because they never stop scrapping from behind.
Yeah. So Mad Lions, yeah, they're at like 25 deaths per loss. That's pretty crazy. So all right, yeah, I don't know if I want to play SK. That might be another team that I just fade. Like, I think your take is pretty smart where like if you just play the SK outcome in like 2 out of 20 lineups or something, you are giving yourself slate winning upside depending on who you pair them with. So yeah, it does come down to, I guess, how many lineups you're gonna play at the end of the day.
All right, well, we'll move on to our fourth game of the slate. We got Vitality, who's 1-4 versus G2, 4-1. I'll give a gift to the people. Don't leave home without your G2s. We know what happened last time when I said that. So all in on Vitality for you all out there. We'll start with you, Michael, on this one. G2 versus Vitality. Who do you got? Would you want a 4 stack from this one? Who's winning the game?
I think the crazy thing is I was kind of looking into ownership of G2 players so far this season, and the number has been steadily climbing, and I'm pretty sure in the last slate they were like between 50 to 60% of entries. So it's really tough. Wonder's better than Shigenda. Yonkos is better than Skeens. Caps is better than Melitza. Reckless is better than Comp. Mickey X is better than Labrov. Uh, but at the end of the day, if Vitality gets the win, we would still assume that G2 gives up a ton of deaths in their losses. Uh, which you could kind of take it as like um implied because of the other top teams in the LEC that have been losing, like Fnatic and Mad Lions, and their deaths per loss are both around 25. Because, like we've said in the past, I genuinely don't think that G2 Fnatic Mad Lions respects a lot of the other teams in the league, and they're just like, screw it. If we look stupid on stage and we have 25 deaths, do we really care? Like, we think that we can catch them slipping in a random team fight and just outskill them. So I think that's going to be what we see more often than not from a lot of these teams. So I'm fine playing the Vitality angle if you really want to. It's just you need to limit your exposure to them greatly, um, for two reasons. One, you're already getting massive leverage off of G2 if you play Vitality, um, and two, you don't want to kill your entire bankroll playing Vitality lineups against G2. So in games that Vitality wins, would you trust them? Like, do you think that it's going to be more of a Schalke situation, or are you going to play the like upwards of 25 kills side?
I think it would probably be more of the upwards of 25 kill side, just because to me, Vitality is less likely to like play the game out as cleanly as Schalke did when they got that really early lead, and so they could be ahead and then get a little bit. G2 could crawl back a little bit and Vitality wins the last team fight because they're still on a gold lead or something like that. I mean, I don't think that like trying to project if G2 is going to die a lot in their losses is probably like a good idea. The answer is usually yes. So if you want to play the non G2 team in a G2 matchup, I don't hate that on basically any slate unless you're playing Astralis or something like that.
Okay, so the my last take for this would be, if you're somebody who wants to play Vitality, you have to ask yourself, do you think that Vitality could create a draft advantage against G2? Um, and I think the answer is yes, because G2 will get into spots where they don't have good reads on the meta because the game is too easy for them against their opponents. In their game against Schalke, they gave up Udyr and played Graves into it, or they may have picked Graves and were countered by Udyr, so maybe that's something they're getting wise to. But if you want to play 20 lineups with one or two with Vitality stacked with like gigantic favorites, and then you have like Vitality as your primary stack, as long as you think it's possible for Vitality to outdraft G2, I think it is worth having some exposure to them. But like I said, you need to limit your exposure, um, because the odds say they win like 20% of the time. I do think that Vitality is a good real life bet. Um, but it's it's tough. Like you need to be a very process driven better to feel comfortable with something like that.
All right, we'll move on to you, Alan. Your quick thoughts on wrapping up G2 and Vitality.
Yeah, so I think Michael covered it pretty well. I will be playing a little bit of G2 lineups this week because they're gonna fit with SK, and I was talking about how I liked that SK Mad Lions game generally. So why not just throw them with G2 SK with G2 if I'm looking for a favorite to throw them with. But I still think that like on most slates G2's ownership is just out of control. Maybe if because they lost last week it comes down a tiny bit, but I doubt it. So so yeah, this game doesn't really get me excited either way. I'll play a little bit of G2 with a dog SK most likely, and then uh, be much heavier on the next game, I would assume.
Okay, well, jumping into the next game, our last one of the slate, we got Fnatic versus Astralis. Fnatic has kind of rebounded after their slow start in Super Week, and Astralis. I'm surprised they got a win, but maybe Fnatic do falter here. I'm guessing that the case that's not going to happen. But we'll jump to you first on this one, Alan. Fnatic versus Astralis. Who do you like? Who's taking this thing? Are we all in on Fnatic, or can Astralis get the upset?
No, I think Astralis should be favored here. They have nuked up.
Boo,
No, no,
boo.
that's
Recycling jokes. Boo. Material.
no, no. Fnatic's gonna win. The nice thing about this one is that you can fit it a little bit with Fnatic with different teams just because G2 is always on slates as the highest priced team. So yeah, I think I'll fit Fnatic in a few lineups. It's basically a guaranteed win. It just becomes the fantasy scoring aspect, I suppose. But Fnatic is a team that scores really well in their wins. Astralis has gave up more deaths than I expected in their losses because in the past when they were Origin, they were one of the worst teams for that purpose. So yeah, I think Fnatic's in a really good spot here. I know that's that is the opposite of a hot take. It's kind of like what Michael was saying, where it's like if I were to say that was a hot take, you would be like, what? No. So yeah, no, that it's not a hot take, but I think that Fnatic is in a good spot, and I'm gonna have some exposure to them. I think they will mix with my Mad Lions lineup, so I'll probably mix them with SK once or twice, and yeah. So I think it's a good spot for Fnatic.
Well, it sounds like Fnatic's basically a lock, according to Alan. Michael, what are your thoughts on this one? Is there an avenue where Astralis can take the upset?
Yeah, I think the answer has to be yes, but I'm not playing it. I just think that I'm off of that. I'm honestly closer to fading Fnatic in this spot because I think that okay, I'm not going to fade Fnatic. I will only play Fnatic if I think the lineup I create has a chance to be completely unique. Like this is not a team that I want to get exposure to in generic stacks that anybody can build. For me to play Fnatic, it needs to be 4-2-1s, 3-3-1s, maybe some like weird combination that barely fits two good teams together. because I want to make sure that I stay far away from the heavily duplicated lineups for Fnatic specifically. They are one of the most popular teams. So I guess that's really something you can use for Fnatic G2 and on any slate where there's just an overwhelming favorite that people like to play DraftKings with. So how does that happen? Maybe Astralis says to themselves, wow, we really got dominated by G2 esports. That wasn't fun. Let's try not giving up 30 kills in one match. Let's see how that goes. And they revert to their old origin ways because of the nuke duck himself. So yeah, if I played, what's the max entry for this contest?
Actually,
47.
There's
Yeah.
tons of contests.
If I played 47 in the Shock Blast, I will be playing 0 Astralis. If Astralis beats me, then I deserve to lose, and that's fine. I'm willing to live with that outcome. If Fnatic beats me with like a super heavy duped lineup, all right, you win this round, Fnatic. But if it's one of those obscure, weird combinations of teams, then you might see me up there because that's the only way I want to get exposure to these heavily owned teams.
All right. Well, that was not the answer I was hoping to hear. I was hoping to hear that Yamato Cannon was a failure and Astralis were going to roll Fnatic and that I should play 100% of them.
You know, if I had the opportunity to change my answer, I would do it.
really
I
went
can't.
away from the brand there.
Yeah. Don't worry. Well, I'm sure we'll have more of those.
Plenty of
in the
opportunities
future.
in the
Yeah.
future.
Who are they playing tomorrow, for example?
Well, we'll have to tune in next time for that, and that show will be behind the paywall. But I want to thank everybody for watching the free show
They're
today
playing
on
Me
Thursday.
Too tomorrow. That's so funny. Oh my god, I can't wait. That's gonna be so good.
If you
Or
enjoyed
2
the
days from
video, be sure to like and subscribe to the Esports Department YouTube channel. I also want to thank Michael and Alan for joining me tonight. You can find Michael at League of Items on Twitter and Alan at LCS Picks. Be sure to give them a follow. They put out some great content out there every once in a while. And if you want to follow me, I'm Alan at XGhostWriter90. Come see me, say hi. If you have opinions on the show or something you'd like to see, hit me up in a DM. They're open. But also, don't forget, if you want to support the show, that you can get 10% off of the subscription by using the code IEDGE. If you do get a subscription, you gain access to the projections for League of Legends, CSGO. You also get access to Gelati's betting picks, which have been pretty fire for this year. And you also get game write-ups with Gelati, along with John breaking down the LPL and LCK every day. Good luck on the slate, and let's go make some money.
Woo!